He killed his baby and used in the house.
Okay, you said that he told you he killed his baby? Okay, ma'am, listen to me. What's your name?
I just want to take a moment to warn you that the topics in this case are dark and heavy. In fact, I had to take 2 days off from writing the script just to digest the events that revolved around it. So if you are somebody that is triggered or sensitive around the topic of abuse, viewers' discretion is strongly advised. This is the case of the incestuous murders. Little did Katie Pladl, an adoptive daughter, know that her decision to reconnect with her biological parents would be the worst decision she would ever make. And despite hoping for a renewed connection with her family, this relationship would take a turn for the worst. In 1995, 20-year-old Steven Pladl initiated a romantic relationship with a 15-year-old Alyssa Garcia through an online chat room. Alyssa had ran away from San Antonio, Texas to be with Steven in New York. See, Alyssa's parents never really approved of their relationship, but they also felt they couldn't stop Steven, so they just didn't do anything about it. Now Steven, he was a little bit strange and a bit of a loner. His classmates even remember bullying him in high school for wearing the same jersey every single day.
You know, we never knew anything about it, but definitely you could say that it might be strange. The hockey jersey, San Jose Sharks, I mean, every day. And we would be in same gym classes. They'd have the same grade, different grades in the same gym class. And he was the type of kid that he would just never change for gym class. Super quiet, other than when he had his, a few friends around him. Something must have been off. How he was treated at home, or he was getting bullied in school. There's something had to be off to get his life to this spot, and then to take down all these other lives as well. And it's a really horrible, heartbreaking thing.
Tragically, Alyssa became pregnant at the age of 16 and gave birth to their first child, Denise. And when she was 17, she alleged that Steven subjected Denise to abuse. At this point, Steven isolated Alyssa. She felt she had nowhere to go, nowhere to turn to, and no way to escape the trajectory of Steven's path of destruction. And it wasn't long before she saw Steven for the monster that he was. Entrapped in a cycle of abuse, she felt she had no escape. You see, Steven was violent, controlling, and displayed traits of psychopathy.
He was verbally, emotionally, and mentally abusive throughout our 20 years together. Did do many violent things. He had nearly beaten to death one cat and did beat to death another cat.
Alyssa claimed that Steven would pinch baby Denise and leave bruises. He would even cover the baby's mouth and suffocate her till she would turn blue. Eventually, the crying would drive Steven mad, and he would put the baby in a cooler. He would even prevent Alyssa from trying to take her out until the baby was drenched in sweat and gasping for air. As a result, Alyssa made the difficult decision to put baby Denise up for adoption. She shifted her reasoning to postpartum depression and finances. This is dark. Look, I'm not a parent, so I'm not trying to put Alyssa up on the chopping block. However, if some monster is doing this to your child, do the sensible thing and just call the police. I understand that these types of relationships are hard to get out of, but at the end of the day, this is your child, and you are there to protect them. That's all I gotta say. Finally, Denise had been adopted by Anthony and Kelly Fusco. The Fuscos were known in their community as being compassionate and kind in nature. Anthony was an officer with the State Department of Corrections, and Kelly was a secretary. They renamed the baby Katie, and she was sent to live in their happy home in Dover, about 80 miles from New York. Under their care, Katie flourished into a talented young woman, and at this point she was preparing for her journey in college. Alyssa, on the other hand, fell deeper into her dependency with Steven, and she felt despite such volatile behavior, Steven could change. And in 2006, Alyssa agreed to marry Steven. She pictured a fairy tale next to him, but little did she know that this was a nightmare she could never wake up from. 9 years after Katie's adoption, Alyssa and Steven had a second child, and 5 years later, their third. Steven, he was still abusive, but he seemed to be coping better with the challenges of parenting. That's when him and the family decided to make a big move to Henrico, Virginia. However, it wouldn't last long due to Steven's inability to hold a job down longer than a couple of weeks. This put extra pressure on Alyssa, and she had to work various jobs just to cover the bills. Steven, on the other hand, was at home, and he had developed an obsession with firearms. He even acquired quite the collection. All the while, his family felt that they had to be more and more careful around Steven. They felt like they were constantly walking on eggshells. Alyssa felt she did her best to protect the kids against Steven, but working multiple jobs meant she left them in his care. She once came home to her daughter standing in the bath, covered in her own urine, as a punishment for not making it to the bathroom on time, and she had been there for hours. Alyssa at this point realized that Steven wouldn't change. She even tried to leave him on several occasions. He would manipulate her into staying by telling her that if she left, he would blow his brains out and leave a recording of it behind, so her and the kids would be forced to watch. That's messed up, man. Alyssa felt hopeless and lost. That was until in 2015, she received a friend request from her long-lost daughter, Denise, now known as Katie. Alyssa was happy to learn that Katie, now 17, had lived a wonderful life next to her adoptive family. She was thriving in school and loved animals so much that she even became a vegetarian. And ironically, she had taken an interest in taking care of stray cats. And Katie, she was so artistic. She was known in school for her comic book strips. She once wrote in a blog, "A pen and something to draw on became a safe place for me. Ink became my weapon against rules and regulation. To be short, for a life without art is no life at all." Katie, she was ambitious. She had plans of attending community college before transferring to the State University of New York. She was set on studying digital advertising, which made sense because she loved art. I guess you could say that life was on the up and up for Katie, but she always felt the void of not knowing her biological parents. There was always that one piece of the puzzle that was always missing. And through extensive searches in 2015, she took it upon herself to find them both. She just couldn't believe it. After all this time, her parents were still together, and she had 2 biological sisters. To Katie, they looked like a happy family, and she couldn't help but feel drawn to it. And of course, Alyssa and Steven responded enthusiastically and couldn't wait to make plans for them to meet in Henrico, Virginia. And in June 2016, the Pladl family was finally reunited. Alyssa was in sheer disbelief. She had been marking Katie's birthday every single year on a calendar. They spent the majority of their first day together getting reacquainted and taking photos. Katie felt that she had finally found her missing piece of the puzzle, and that void that ruled her thoughts and emotions just ceased to exist for a moment. Katie had loved spending time with her biological family, so much so that she shocked her adoptive parents when she announced that she would be moving in with her biological family. Anthony and Kelly Fusco were saddened by this news, but by this time Katie was 18 and there was virtually nothing they could do about it. And as you can imagine, by this time Steven started displaying some disturbing changes. He started making more effort in his appearance. He started to dress different and even shaved off his beard to appear younger. He even grew out his hair that was the style of the boys at the time that were Katie's age. Alyssa had convinced herself that Steven was just trying to be a cool dad to impress Katie. However, Steven's change in appearance would be the last thing Alyssa would have to worry about. See, for the last 2 decades, Steven had threatened Alyssa if she even thought about leaving him. However, oddly enough, Steven was suddenly okay with moving forward with a divorce. Shortly after, Steven and Alyssa started sleeping in separate rooms. And Alyssa was so distracted by Katie moving in that she didn't even question Steven's change of heart. But it didn't take long before the true nature of this decision came to light. As Alyssa was working long hours at T-Mobile, Katie had been spending the majority of her days with her dad. Alyssa had suspected that Steven had been trying to turn Katie against her, but even this was so far from the truth. One night, 6 weeks after Katie had moved in, Alyssa had learned that Steven had been sleeping on the floor of Katie's room. Once confronted, he acted out aggressively and just left the house altogether. Alyssa at this point started growing increasingly concerned over her daughter. She decided to tell her about Steven's dark side and that she had suffered abuse at the hands of her father. And Katie? She was unwavered and not bothered by what she had just been told. This is where Alyssa drew the line. She was finally ready to leave and get her kids away from Steven. After all, she had custody over the kids. Surprisingly, Katie decided to stay with Steven, and shockingly, was the truth that was just about to unravel. In 2017, Alyssa's daughters had just gotten back from spending time with Steven and Katie. And while unpacking her bags, she came across a disturbing journal entry. The little girl had written about the relationship between Steven and Katie and said, "Katie is my big sis, and I f***ing love her. I also love how skinny she is in areas and has smaller breasts. But how is she pregnant and gained weight, and my dad calls her baby, also his baby? Did he make her pregnant? My dad even says she is my stepmom, WTF. He doesn't even want me to say or call her my sis anymore. Katie is my sister. She is probably his wife now, but in nature, she is my sister. Does she see me as a daughter or a sister? Katie now tells me sometimes to get the fuck up." And also in the journal are drawings of Steven depicted as Satan. There's even a drawing of her running away from Satan, saying, "Stop Satan, get the fuck out." And there's even a note that says, what if he is Satan and Katie is human? Then the baby would be half demon. Alyssa, overcome with rage, called Steven and stated, "Is Katie pregnant with your baby?" He responded with, "We're in love and I thought you knew." Alyssa screamed and said, "How could you? You're sick. She's a child." Alyssa felt sick to her stomach knowing that Steven had exposed his 2 other daughters to the situation. She proceeded to call the police, and during the ensuing investigation, Steven, his 2 younger daughters, and Katie were all questioned, but no immediate arrests were made. Alyssa had hoped that the investigation would lead to Steven's arrest, but in 2017, Steven Pladl married his 20-year-old daughter, Katie, in a romantic lakeside ceremony in Parkton, Maryland. Just to be clear, this type of marriage is illegal, but Steven had lied on the application saying that him and Katie were not related. At the wedding was Steven's 72-year-old mother, Grace, and strangely enough, Katie's adoptive parents. You could see them all in this photo smiling, standing next to their daughter and her biological father/husband. This is just one of the strangest things I've ever heard. For a second, I'd want to know what was going through Katie's mind when she thought this was okay. What was her reaction to his initial advances? I mean, Steven has a history of this behavior, but Katie didn't. So how did we get here? Steven and Katie moved to a house in Knightdale, North Carolina, just 20 minutes from his mother's house, Grace. They began living openly as husband and wife. And in 2017, Katie went on to give birth to their son, Bennett Kieran Pladl. Steven and Katie were both arrested in January 2018, and Steven was extradited to Henrico, and they both faced the charges of incest. And in Steven's case, they added contributing delinquency to a minor. Steven was released 1 month later on a $28,000 bond and a zero contact order against Katie. And Katie, she was also bailed, but ordered to move back with her adoptive family in New York. And Steven's 72-year-old mother was given custody of little Bennett. This is when the couple started making headlines all over the world for their incestuous relationship.
20-year-old Katie Pladl, who was also Steven's daughter. She was adopted at birth by the Fusco family in Wingdale, New York. At 18, she wanted to find her birth parents. She did, even moving in with them and eventually sleeping with and marrying her biological father.
You may recall that those individuals were the subject of an arrest here in Knightdale back in January 2018.
Steven's lawyer made the ridiculous argument that Steven never pressured Katie into this relationship. Like that makes any bit of a difference, really. And as this was happening, Katie tried to settle back into her life in New York. She took up work cleaning houses for her grandmother and began to gain clarity on the situation that had happened. She even questioned some of the decisions she had made. And suddenly, being married to Steven just didn't sit right with her. And on the 11th of April, she called Steven and asked him for a divorce. She hoped that they can end things civilly and that they could co-parent in a healthy environment. But clearly, Katie had no idea the monster she was up against. Steven made several attempts to change Katie's mind, even though there was a zero contact order. On Thursday, April 12, 2018, Tony Fusco and his daughter Katie headed to Waterbury from their home in Dover, and Steven was tailing behind them in a Honda minivan. Katie had a job cleaning a house for her grandmother. A few moments later, they came to a stop at an intersection. There was only a few cars on the road that morning, and several witnesses happened to watch as Steven's minivan pulled alongside Tony's truck. This is when Steven rolled down his window. They watched as Steven pulled out an Arrow assault rifle and emptied it into the truck. When the police got to the scene, they found the bodies of Tony Fusco and Katie Pladl still strapped to their seats. Soon after, the minivan was found just over the state border. In the van was Steven, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Meanwhile, a 911 call had been made by Steven's mother.
He killed his baby and used in the house.
Okay, you said that he told you he killed his baby? Okay, ma'am, listen to me. What's your name?
Police were immediately dispatched to conduct a welfare check on baby Bennett. Once arriving at the home, they found the lifeless body of a baby boy in the upstairs bedroom.
20-year-old Katie Pladl and 56-year-old Anthony Fusco were killed in his pickup truck in New Milford yesterday by multiple gunshots from an assault rifle. Police say pulling that trigger was Steven Pladl, who was Katie's father, husband, and father of her baby.
The father that raised her, the adoptive father, she had came up here staying with him in Wingdale, and next thing you know, there's a shooting.
Responding officers on scene were able to determine that the suspect in this case had died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
What upsets me the most about this case is that there were so many opportunities where this entire scenario could have been prevented. Alyssa's parents could have tried to stop Steven from dating their underage daughter in 1995. Alyssa could have called the police when Steven was abusing Denise. Alyssa could have met Katie for the first time away from Steven, seeing that she knew the monster that he was. Katie could have said no to Steven's advances in the first place. And Kelly and Tony Fusco could have not shown support for their daughter's relationship with her biological father. In the end, I don't know if changing any of these decisions would have changed the outcome. Maybe I'd still be sitting here talking to you, making this video. But it's always important to stand up against something, especially when you know it's wrong. So I want to know what you think. Where could have this been prevented? Leave it in the comments below. And again, I want to express my gratitude if you made it to this point in the video. As you know, I work really hard in making great quality content for you guys. And if you could hit the like, the subscribe, and even the alert bell, it'll let me know that you guys are enjoying the content that I'm making. So until next time, I will see you when the lights go out.